The many statistics out there now, is there one that you look at that will indicate to you during the season that Dak is being successful right now? He's doing what you want him to do in your system?
Yeah, wins.
With this being the second video in my NFL season preview series, I wanted to talk about why the Dallas Cowboys will be better than you think in this 2025 NFL season. And I know that's probably a polarizing take. By default, the Cowboys are arguably the most hated team in professional sports, regardless of football, regardless of any team in the NFL in general. A lot of people don't like them. Either you love them or you hate them. And there's a lot of reasons why. When you look at it from a player acquisition standpoint, not gonna lie, the Cowboys have moved differently in this offseason. They made 4 trades. They've re-signed 6 players, and they also signed 9 new players to be added to this team. With that, we know Brian Schottenheimer at the head coach position. At the beginning, it felt like a head-scratching move. This guy hadn't been interviewed for a head coaching job in a really long time. But when you look at some of the moves that he's made from a staff standpoint, really turning over essentially 99% of the staff, only returning Lunda Wells on Schottenheimer's staff, it looks pretty solid. And we'll talk about more of the staff standpoint because really, as we know in the NFL and just sports overall, coaching really does matter, man, when you get into it. Because if you have a lame duck head coach who doesn't know what he's doing, along that with the staff who are just regular Joe Blows, you're not going to get anything going from a winning standpoint. You're just going to be mid. But it really seems like Brian Schottenheimer really trying to change the culture, and we've seen that. But also, I talked about how the Cowboys have been moving a little bit differently, making those different moves. We all know the most popular move that they made, trading for George Pickens, finally addressing that wide receiver 2 position, or just really having another weapon in general opposite of CeeDee Lamb. And I think that's huge because going into the draft, a lot of people had the Cowboys mock to pick T-Mac, Tedderell McMillan, who ended up being drafted 8 overall to the Carolina Panthers. So once that happened, a lot of people were like, man, I don't know, because of the wide receiver draft. But when you look at the draft now that the Cowboys had in comparison to now trading for George Pickens, it looks really good. Drafting Tyler Booker in the first round, going to be at the right guard position, essentially the predecessor to Hall of Famer Zach Martin, who just retired in this offseason. That's a really good pick there. And then in the second round, getting a steal at the 44th pick overall in Donovan Ezaraku, I think he's going to be a really good edge rusher, not only from a pass rush standpoint, but also in the run game too. Because yes, he had 16.5 sacks last year at Boston College, but he also was a really good run stopper. So that just adds some more depth to that room, who we all know they have Micah Parsons, who I know the Cowboys will get that deal done with eventually. Going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Just a matter about when and not if, but you know how the Dallas Cowboys moving. Even though Jerry Jones had a sideline conversation with Micah Parsons during mandatory minicamp, Micah said that wasn't about the contract, but we'll see. So it could be done the day of this video recording, or it could be done 5 weeks from now when training camp starts in Oxnard for the Dallas Cowboys. So we never know. But talking about the edge rushing room, I think that the Cowboys, they'll be improved from a defensive standpoint, because with Matt Eberflus, we all know that he wasn't a good coach for the Chicago Bears. I mean, it is what it is, but he is a really good coordinator, a damn good coordinator. And I think that he's going to really be smart. He runs a press man coverage for a secondary, and I think that's going to complement players like Deron Bland, and they're still waiting for guys like Trayvon Diggs to come back off of injury, although that he released a recent workout video where he's looking pretty good. So I would probably expect him to be back in the middle of the season some point. And then having Deron Bland going into his last year, it seems like the Cowboys, at least from mandatory minicamp and at OTAs, he's been playing more of a slot at the nickel corner position. So we all know that he might be a little conflicted about that, because we know outside corners usually make more than nickel corners. So we'll see about that. But they have some depth there, and they drafted Shavon Ravel out of East Carolina in the 3rd round. I think that's a really huge steal too. One of the best defensive backs in this draft, just because he had a torn ACL injury last season. That's a really good pick too. So I'm coinciding that with the draft perspective. From a player personnel perspective, signing some free agents, keeping players like Osa Odigizua, re-upping Kevontae Turpin, adding some more depth to the defensive line room. I think they're going to be improved from a defense perspective, but also offensively too, because in my opinion, I know it's probably ironic and rash to say, but the Cowboys added the best quarterback this offseason with the return of Dak Prescott coming back, because he got injured in week 9 last year. And we all know the tumultuous season the Cowboys had last year, going 7-10. They dealt with a lot of injuries, but let's call it a spade a spade. They were pretty shite last year, and that's just what it is. The team just had no command. They were getting out physical, and we'll talk about more of how really this team for years now has had a problem with stopping the run and things of that nature, and really just being physical and just having the front runner perspective. But I think that really changes now, because Brian Schottenheimer is preaching that this team is going to be multiple and being physical, not only stopping the run, but also in the run game as well too. And we'll get to the running back perspective of things too, because we all know the Derrick Henry ghost of last year from 2024, the Cowboys not trying to pursue him at all, things like that. But it seems like the Cowboys are going to do a running back by committee type of thing, having again Miles Sanders, having Javonte Williams, rookie Jadon Blue, who they drafted in the 5th round, who I think he can be a really good back for this team, has a lot of juice, and even drafting a Phil Maffa. We'll see. That's 4 running backs there, and they also have Deuce Vaughn too, and fullback Hunter Lepke. So I don't know how they're going to really decipher that. We'll see what happens, but it looks like Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams will be getting a lot of snaps off the rip, so we'll see about that. But I think it's safe to expect a better running game, because that'll help Dak Prescott. But really what it comes down to is it's Dak Prescott. How is he going to play this season? The Cowboys need him to stay healthy regardless. I know they don't have Cooper Rush anymore, and usually when Dak got hurt, for example, and it's a long period of time, like for last year, we knew the season was over with Cooper Rush starting. No offense to bro, because he's a solid backup, but he's not going to push the needle there. They added Joe Milton as a backup this season, but you still don't want Joe Milton on the field in the regular season. You want Dak to be there because from a practical standpoint, he offers the best chance for the Cowboys to win, and they need him to do that. He's getting paid $60 million per year now. There's no excuses, and they added George Pickens. They have CD Lamb, and this year CD Lamb, unlike last year, has been at OTAs, mandatory minicamp, all things like that, so he'll be even more sharp this season than last year. In my opinion, he should be a dark horse candidate for Offensive Player of the Year, and I'll get more into that later, but there's no excuses for Dak Prescott. I'm not gonna lie, guys. And now having a hopefully improved running game, Rico Dowdle wasn't bad last year, but it took the Cowboys a while to finally give him the running back one position fully. It's time for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys to really make some noise. And if the season goes how I think it will, I think Dak also has a shot of winning Comeback Player of the Year in addition to that too. And I'm not saying they're gonna win a Super Bowl, nothing like that. I'm not saying they're gonna go crazy this year, but I think they'll be better than a lot of people think. And a lot of people don't pay attention to the moves specifically and intricately that the Cowboys make because it's just funny to make a meme out of them at times and stuff like that, which is understandable. But if you look at it from a breakdown perspective, which we'll get to in this video, the Cowboys will be certainly an improved football team, and I won't be surprised if they win 10, 11, 12, shoot, maybe even 13 games, and even maybe win the division, because like I talked about with the Eagles in my season preview video, for them, no team has repeated in the NFC East as division champion since 2004, so it wouldn't shock me at all if the Cowboys win a division this year, but only time will tell, because you have the Commanders in this division who have made some moves. They were in the NFC Championship game last year, so make no mistake, they are still there and ready to improve. Shoot, I'm not even gonna lie, the Giants, they made a lot of moves defensively. I'm still not a huge believer in their offense, but hey, anyone can prove me wrong. In the NFC in general, I mean, you have the Rams, you have the Lions, you have the Vikings, you have the Packers, all these teams that will make some moves for sure, so we will see. But I definitely think that the Cowboys, they will be better than a lot of people think, and we're gonna dive even deeper into this video why I specifically see this Dallas Cowboys team making the playoffs and being an improved and more physical football team for sure. But yeah, guys, before we get even further into this Dallas Cowboys season preview, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. You know what we post about here, videos about the NBA, NFL, Marvel, DC, pop culture, all videos and things like that. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss, on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for shorts, reels, and all type of content like that. And with that being said, let's talk about why the Dallas Cowboys will be better than you think in 2025. So when talking about the Dallas Cowboys, we all know the three biggest glaring problems this team has had for the past couple of years: stopping the run, being able to run the football, and also having a weapon opposite CD Lamb. They finally got the weapon opposite CD Lamb, and I think that's going to open up the offense even more for players like a Jalen Tolbert, for a Jake Ferguson. I also wanted to talk a little bit about their tight end position. I mentioned Jake Ferguson. He was a little injured last year, had a concussion, and dealt with some lingering things last year when he did play. Kind of struggled a little bit, some of that being just playing with Cooper Rush and things of that nature too. But I like the room right now in terms of what he can do as a pass catcher and blocking at times. But really, I'm intrigued by also Brevin Spanford, the rookie last year who was undrafted. He has shown to be the best blocking tight end on this team, and I really like how he'll be able to be potentially utilized with Jake Ferguson, and that really makes a player like Luke Schoonmaker, a 2023 second round pick, potentially expendable. We will see at training camp in Oxnard, but I really like how Brevin Spanford, and apparently per reports, he has been looking really good as a pass catcher as well too. So that's just some more weapons to be added in to the passing game for Dak Prescott, along with George Pickens and of course CD Lamb at the head of the snake, with Jake Ferguson, Turpin, Mingo, Jalen Tolbert. So it's making the Cowboys have a lot of assets potentially to help further unlock this offense and have different sets and be multiple. That'll allow them to have opportunities to really flourish in their roles, getting guarded by the maybe third, the fourth, the fifth best players in the secondary and being covered by linebackers. But talking about stuff like the run defense first in particular, I want to talk about from the 2023 and 2024 season. Now, mind you, 3 years in a row, the Dallas Cowboys, they were 12-5 in 2021, 2022, and 2023. If you look at their last season, that they were 12-5 in 2023 when they were the second seed, mind you. Even that season, in terms of a run stopping standpoint, they finished 30th against the run in the 2023 season. And really, that was a huge glaring problem when we saw them play against the Green Bay Packers. But just overall, from a stat specific standpoint, it was around the same last season when they were 7-10. They gave up over 2,300 rushing yards, 25 rushing touchdowns, and nearly 5 yards per carry. I mean, this team was just getting bludgeoned in the run game, and that brought up a big need in terms of the defensive tackle and a one tech in terms of the nose tackle. And we all know, if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan particularly, you know that Mozzie Smith, the first round pick from the 2023 NFL draft, hasn't necessarily panned out as much, but this for him is going to be a really big season in determining how that goes and really that defensive line as a whole. And I talked about the D-line a little bit from an edge rushing standpoint, with Micah Parsons, of course, being the head of the snake, being one of the top 3 edge rushers in the game, drafting Donovan Ezeraku, a rookie, having Marshawn Nealon, their second round pick last year, back. Sam Williams returning after tearing his ACL in training camp last year too. That just adds some more depth to that defensive end room, and he in particular is going into a contract year too, so he wants to make some noise and solidify why he's a really good pass rusher and why he was able to make some impactful plays a couple years ago with the Dallas Cowboys before missing last season. And then bringing in Dante Fowler Jr. back, who had 10 sacks last season for the Washington Commanders and was on the Dallas Cowboys prior to leaving in 2024. I think think that helps that room be very deep now. But the defensive line, that's going to be something there, because I like them drafting Jay Toia in the 7th round from UCLA, but we'll see how much of an impact he has. He's a specimen for sure. At his size, being 6'2", 342 pounds, he'll be able to help clog the lanes in terms of the A gap and B gap when teams are trying to run the football down the Cowboys' throats. But that'll be a determining factor there. Mozzie Smith is going to have to show up for sure. And they also drafted Tommy Akingbasote in the 7th round from Maryland, another defensive tackle too. So I know you don't want to necessarily be relying on 7th round picks too. That's why I see that could be a glaring problem. But if these guys step up, I mean, you never know, because when you get into training camp and things like that, that type of stuff won't matter. It's about who is the best player. So we'll see. I think that's one glaring thing to monitor for the Dallas Cowboys, who they could potentially add in terms of a defensive tackle standpoint, because they're going to need to stop the run. The Cowboys are going to have to also prove that they can stop the run too, because teams are going to continue to use that same strategy to see if this team is truly better at doing that. And I like them adding in Aaron Whitecotton, who was previously with the New York Jets as their defensive line coach. We know that they had one of the better defenses and defensive lines in the league, having a Quentin Williams, but also they had Solomon Thomas on the Jets, who followed his coordinator to Dallas and is now on the Dallas Cowboys. I think Solomon Thomas, as long as he's able to stay healthy, he'll be a specimen in being able to help the defensive line too. So they've added some players for sure. And I mentioned they added 9 free agents to this team, and I want to talk about them specifically. The first free agent being Miles Sanders at the running back position. He's now 28 years old, and we all know he didn't look great in Carolina, but not a lot of people look great in Carolina. No offense to Panthers fans. And also Chuba Hubbard really took over that running back position spot, so he really didn't have much of an opportunity to play, and he was also injured at times too as well. But Miles Sanders, apparently to reports from Dallas Cowboys reporters like John Machota, Tommy Yarish, Bobby Belt, and other sources, he has been looking better and really good in their training camp. So definitely something to monitor with Miles Sanders, because when they brought him in and signed him, I thought that was just some extra insurance, but with them already signing Javonte Williams. But I'm intrigued to see how he does on the team. And also talking about Javonte Williams, who they also signed on a 1-year, $3 million deal, I think that he could be rejuvenated as well too. As we all know, he had an injury a couple years ago in week 4 of the 2022 season, really almost 3 years ago, tearing his ACL, LCL, and his posterolateral corner of his knee. That takes a lot to recover from, guys. So I think being nearly 3 years off of injury, that should help him have some more juice, hopefully. I mean, the guy is only 25 years old, so we can still make the argument that he has a lot in the tank in terms from that standpoint at the running back position, where usually when they're nearly 30 years old, it's almost over. That's why I'm intrigued to see how Miles Sanders does. But even talking about them, since I'm talking about the running back position, also I was talking about the free agents, but talking about the running back position even more, I am really intrigued by Jadon Blue. He's really good at the backfield, and he has a lot of juice to his game. I think he ran a 4.28 at his pro day at UT. I think that's really good, and that's the type of player that the Cowboys need in the running game to make those explosive plays, because I think this team will inevitably face light boxes against defenses with now having George Pickens being there with CeeDee Lamb. That's going to make defensive coordinators make sure that their secondary is shored up, and that might make things easier so the Cowboys can be multiple in terms of their play action standpoint and really being a physical football team and not being predictable, because this team under Mike McCarthy the past couple of years when he was play caller, they were very predictable. We already knew that Dak was going to throw the ball nearly 30 to 40 times per game, and that's just what it was. Now, it was really good in the 2023 season from a regular season standpoint, where Dak finished second in MVP voting, but as we see in the playoffs and games that it mattered most, especially against Green Bay, that really crippled them, and they have to be multiple if they want to have success and be unpredictable in their game this year against teams to be a real threat. Some of these free agents, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not even sure if they're gonna make the roster. No disrespect to wide receiver Paris Campbell, but when you look at the wide receiver room, we already know CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert, Kevontae Turpin, Jonathan Mingo. That's 5 receivers right there. Then you have players like Jalen Brooks still, you have Ryan Florida. I mean, there's a lot of different players to talk about, so I'm not even sure if he makes the team. Could make the practice squad roster, but I'm not sure about there. But if you look at some more positions, they really added some more offensive line players just to have more depth at that position, because they want to make sure if they have any injuries, there's a next man up mentality. They signed offensive tackle Hakeem Adeniji. Hopefully I said his name right. They also signed offensive guard Robert Jones to a 1-year deal. They signed Sadiq Charles on a 1-year deal as well too. So like I said, they added 3 offensive linemen in the free agent perspective alone. They re-signed also Brock Hoffman, and to that defensive line, I talked about it a little bit, but they brought in Dante Fowler Jr., making it his second stint with the Dallas Cowboys. They signed former first-round pick Peyton Turner to a 1-year, $3 million deal. Re-signed Osa Odigizua. I think it was very important to re-sign him on a 4-year, $80 million contract deal that they needed to retain him. Just being another presence in the Dallas Cowboys locker room that really just helps that defense take command as well too. Also brought in Solomon Thomas, as I mentioned earlier, who can be really good in helping and run stopping and things of that nature too, and getting to the quarterback. As I mentioned, he had 4 sacks last year and he had 6 sacks in 2023. And they also added some other pieces, not too crazy to talk about, just some more cornerback depth, CJ Goodwin, Marquise Bell, and they brought back special teams players who are essential. I mean, Brian Anger, he's a punter, but we're not going to talk about too much about punting. Hopefully for Dallas Cowboys fans and the team, they aren't punting too much. But they also re-signed Kevontae Turpin on a 3-year, $18 million deal. So being a weapon, how he's really a chess piece in that offense, but being arguably the best punt returner in the league right now, I think he is. He's also an intriguing player that Brian Schottenheimer can have packages for in their offense too. So I like that. But from a trade perspective, I really like what they did. Now, George Pickens being one of the best moves, I mean, we don't have to talk about that. Obviously, we know how he is as an ex-receiver, but you can move him around a lot. He'll not only get the 50-50 ball, but I think he's underrated as a route runner too as well too. And I think that we're going to see a rejuvenated George Pickens too in a contract year that will help with the Dallas Cowboys. So we all know that that's a great trade. Him and CeeDee Lamb have the potential to be a top 3 to 5 receiver duo in the league in this 2025 season. And I think that can present a great opportunity for these receivers both to have over 1,000 or even 1,100 receiving yards apiece. And like I mentioned, I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be a dark horse to win Offensive Player of the Year because we saw what he did in 2023, having over 1,700 receiving yards on 135 catches and 14 touchdowns that season. And that's when he was at OTAs, mandatory minicamp, all things of that nature. And last year he wasn't because he was waiting for his new contract, which he got. This year he's back in that mode, and I think that we can see CeeDee Lamb even go even crazier because defense is going to be honest with George Pickens now on the field with CD. There's no more stacking 2 at him because if you send 2 to him, then George Pickens is going to be free. Jake Ferguson's going to be free. Jake Ferguson probably be matched up with some linebackers at times too, so that's going to help when they're in 12 personnel, things of that nature too. I think the Cowboys, from that perspective alone, from offense, they'll be improved for sure. Just having that back too, but adding in reinforcements like that, that's going to help them a lot. But that's a trade for sure for them, the best move that they made this offseason. But getting into other trades that I think are really underrated, trading for a player like Kenneth Murray Jr. Now, he hasn't necessarily lived up to his first round draft status yet, but I think that from the reports in camp with him and a player like Jack Sanborn too, who they signed in the linebacker room, who already knows Matt Eberflus's system, being formerly in Chicago, I think that's going to help with the linebacker position as they're awaiting DeMarvion Overshown to return. They also drafted rookie Shamar James to have Maris Leofau going into his second year, who had a lot of good moments last year too. Damone Clark apparently has been playing really good in OTA and mandatory minicamp as well too, but it'll all come to the test during Oxnard and training camp, so we'll see about that then when they get pads actually on. But I like that move, trading for Kenneth Murray Jr. just to have some more insurance in that linebacker room. And one that's really intriguing that could pay dividends or could be a huge miss is trading for cornerback Kyer Elam, former first round pick, 23rd overall for the Buffalo Bills. Really just things didn't work out there and the scheme was different to what he was used to, but like I talked about a little bit earlier in the intro, Matt Eberflus, he runs a press man type of scheme for his secondary, and I think that'll help Kyer Elam a lot. And in OTAs, apparently he's looked really good, but like I said, we'll see when these guys get into pads truly, because that's where it comes to fruition at a high level. So I like some of their free agent moves. I mean, they're not necessarily signing 50 different people, but they move differently, especially in compared to 2024 when they did absolutely bare minimum. Like, I believe they only signed like 3 to 5 guys. It was really bad, made no trades. They were very complacent, and the team, it was very clear that they weren't going to be improved in 2024, and that's why we saw them take a huge step back. In addition to injuries, I mean, it was inevitable that the Cowboys were going to be bad last season, but this season I think that they're going to be improved for a lot of reasons, not only from a free agent perspective, but from an offensive perspective. I also want to share this clip about what Brian Schottenheimer said, what he idealizes his offense to be like.
Starts with taking care of the football. The quarterbacks, obviously, everybody knows that. Quarterbacks, and I agree with Mike. I mean, quarterbacks are so important to our game. But to me, it's never changed. You know, you got to win the turnover battle. You have to own the line of scrimmage. You have to attack with your playmakers, and you have to be multiple. That's what the system is on all 3 phases: special teams, offense, defense. It doesn't change, and the quarterback's one of those pieces. The quarterbacks are the piece that get a lot of the attention, but at the end of the day, we're going to be judged with whether we win or lose, and the best way to win in this league is to, 1, take care of the football, 2, to have an incredible set of offensive and defensive linemen to control the game, whether you run it, throw it. People want to talk about numbers. Do you throw it 40 times? Do you run it 40 times? Well, it doesn't really matter. You just have to own the line of scrimmage. And then we have some really good pieces, and so we have to move those pieces around and make them hard to find, and that's when you say attack with your playmakers doing that, and then we're going to be multiple.
And that's real because, like I said, that offense under Mike McCarthy, it had its moments for sure. I will say that. I mean, statistically, they were one of the best offenses in 2023, but it became archaic. And before that San Francisco game, I believe in 2023, the offense looked bad too then. CD was struggling to get going, but like I mentioned, though, he ended up having a career year in 2023, but at first it didn't start off hot. But the Cowboys can start off hot going in from day one because they're going to have to, because they're playing against the Eagles on Thursday Night Football with them hanging that banner up. They're going to make a lot of noise. And Brian Schottenheimer, we know he was the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys the past 2 years, but he didn't call the plays. Essentially, it kind of seemed like he was a consultant, obviously putting stuff into Mike McCarthy's system and things of that nature too, but ultimately Mike McCarthy made the final decisions and he was a play caller. But now with with Brian Schottenheimer being the head coach, he won't only be the head coach, but he also be the play caller too as well. So we're going to see what Brian Schottenheimer is going to do calling plays. The last time that Brian Schottenheimer called plays, it was in the 2021 season with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that was a very bad season, as we all know. Urban Meyer was the head coach then. He got fired mid-season. And the last 3 games, though, I will say Trevor Lawrence, he played pretty solid to finish off his year. And the offensive stacks improved for the Jaguars when Brian Schottenheimer calls the plays then. So we'll see what they do with Dak Prescott. I just really think it really comes down to Ford being Dak Prescott, because we know what he's capable of. A lot of people don't like Dak because he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. It's understandable, and we all know that. And make no mistake, he hasn't played great in the playoffs. I mean, that's just reality. If you look at a couple of games that come to mind instantly, in the 2022-23 season against the 49ers, they had a really good shot to beat the 49ers that season to make it to the NFC Championship game to play against the Eagles. But Dak threw those 2 picks. The defense was playing good too, mind you. The Cowboys defense played really good. They were limiting Brock Purdy. They were limiting the run game, Christian McCaffrey, all things of that nature too. But the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, they weren't able to make plays when it mattered most. And that's the main thing with the Dallas Cowboys, because a lot of people look at the Cowboys not taking them serious. The Cowboys can go undefeated in the regular season, but the real test with the Cowboys comes to what they're going to do in the playoffs when they get there. And I definitely think that they're going to make the playoffs this season. That's why I'm making this video. That's why the title is Why the Cowboys Will Be Better Than You Think this year. But to really prove that and solidify that, this culture has to be changed. It's simple as that. Now, we already know the Cowboys are forever going to be flashy beyond Jerry Jones, beyond his presence and stuff like that, just the brand being America's team. But they just need some rough riders. And it seems like Schottenheimer truly is imprinting his culture on that, wanting to be tough. And he's showing that he cares about every single player. Now, I know that type of stuff matters for sure, but if you aren't winning, it really goes all out of the window. But he's really pouring into his players from an offseason perspective, being there for when guys are having stuff like, for example, camps, when they're having stuff for their families and things of that nature too, having foundational stuff too. Brian Schottenheimer has been there. Players have been supporting one another. That's how you build camaraderie for a team. And I think that's one way too that the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to be more united in terms of not having a disconnect, because I'm sure a lot of y'all saw the type of disconnect that, for example, DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons had after DeMarcus Lawrence said he wasn't going to win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. We saw them go back and forth on Twitter. So we know that in the locker room, not necessarily everything was great, but also I talked about a little bit earlier previewing what I wanted to say about the staff for this new Dallas Cowboys team. First and foremost, Mike McCarthy, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach. We all know that in Green Bay. But one thing I will say, he hired his friends. He hired a lot of his friends. And to win in the NFL, especially nowadays, you can't be hiring your friends, man, because that'll get you fired. And that's one thing I admire about DeMeco Ryans, for example. He moved on to new offensive coordinator Nick Caley after their offense really took a step back in the 2024 season under offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, who was really good in the 2023 season with CJ Stroud, really unlocking that offense and that team that season. But in 2024, the offense took a huge step back. Texans fans were frustrated, and they ended up hiring Nick Caley from the Rams to be their offensive coordinator for this upcoming 2025 season. And I bring that point up because Brian Schottenheimer, he's hired a lot of guys that he does not know. Not because he doesn't know them in terms of what they bring from a coaching perspective. He hired them because he knows what they bring from a coaching perspective, but he doesn't have any personal relationships with them prior to being on the staff. Now, I like really a lot of the moves that they made, but first I want to talk about their offensive coordinator, Clayton Adams, because he's going to bring a huge emphasis not only to the running game, but also to this offensive line we really at nauseum could talk about. So previously, offensive coordinator now for the Dallas Cowboys, Clayton Adams, he was the offensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals and had some previous stints on other places being the offensive line coach there, but he helped lead this offensive line and just the offense overall in the running game perspective to being 7th overall in the NFL in the running game, having over 144 rushing yards per game, and they were very multiple. Now, you probably ask, why am I talking about an offensive line coach in terms of the running game? Well, if you know ball, that's obvious. The offensive line is huge and integral in terms of the running game perspective, and I believe Clayton Adams runs a lot of outside zone in his scheme, so he'll be able to really, I think, add a synchronized offense to this team in addition to helping Brian Schottenheimer with his play calling. But if you talk about the offensive line coach as well for the Dallas Cowboys now and Connor Riley, I think that Connor Riley is going to be integral to what the Cowboys do in improving their offensive line and making sure they are aligned and making sure they're in the right spots and being disciplined.
Butt is down. Can we tighten our feet, get off our toes? Yes, we can. Okay, now we're looking back out over here. Okay, stance and start. Is 69 having a great stance and start in this situation? You still have to evaluate not just the execution of the block, but also where are they at with those 5 particular fundamentals. Okay, so you can see right here with 69, all right? His feet aren't very tight. Eyes are under the chin, good. 77 could be a little bit lower, but look how tight those elbows are. Tells me that his hands are inside. Okay, whether you want to run your hips in the block, do any of that, that's fine. But these are now technical aspects, and when we get to the technical aspects of executing blocks, do not forget to get to your basic 5 fundamentals. So now we're working the crawler sled, okay? And again, what am I seeing here, okay? Is my butt down? Okay, yes. Am I getting to the second level defender? All right, are my hands tight? Are my eyes where they're supposed to be? 79 needs to get his butt down. Okay, so he did a pretty good job of executing on the crawler sled, but how do we continue to progress through it? All right, now very briefly here, I want to finish up with this. What are our standards? Okay, I think that, again...
And that's Connor Riley at a recent coaching academy that they had in Dallas, and that just shows that he has command of his room. He's going to play a huge role in improving players like a Tyler Guyton, who at times struggled. Let's call it what it is. In the 2024 season, he was also a little injured and his body failed him at times, but I think that he'll be improved. He's talked about him cleaning up his diet, things of that nature too. I think, like I said, coaching matters in the NFL. So the Cowboys, they have essentially a whole new coaching staff now, and the offensive line is going to be better. Tyler Smith being one of the best left guards in the game, him being there, now drafting Tyler Booker in the first round, who's a mauler. He's going to help in the running game as a blocker too, and also pass blocking as well. That's going to help there. Cooper Beebe being a second year as a center, who was a guard previously at Kansas State, but being reunited with his offensive line coach in college, coming from Kansas State. That's where Connor Riley was previously. That's going to help him even more. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see 2 linemen from this team be Pro Bowlers in the 2025 season, with for sure Tyler Smith, in my opinion, as long as he stays healthy, and or Cooper Beebe, and maybe even a Tyler Booker, depending on how impactful he is his rookie year. But I think he really will be impactful to this team. Now, a wild card on this offensive line that it really comes down to is Terrence Steele for me at the right tackle position. But I think with some better coaching from Colin Riley and Clayton Adams, that he's going to be better. His strength is in the running game too, but we're going to also see how he is pass blocking this year. So that'll determine a lot there too. But I think that this offensive line will be pretty improved, and it's a sneaky, really good one. When the Cowboys are good, they have always had a good offensive line, and we all know they had Tyron Smith and Zach Martin, who both retired this offseason. Beforehand, they had them in previous years, and that's where they had a lot of success in terms of with Tony Romo, and then with a young Dak as well too. So now rebuilding that offensive line, that's been key, and I think that's going to help even more with their offense being electric in the running game, but also in the passing game too, because that's going to help Dak make sure he's clean and he stays healthy, because as long as Dak stays healthy, the Cowboys, in my opinion, will be a playoff team. It just really comes down to that, and now with them having more weapons offensively, that's going to really play a huge role. But talking about the defense a little bit more before I get out of here, guys, man, like I said, stopping the run is going to be a huge emphasis. The Cowboys, they know how to rush the passer for sure. I mean, we've seen that, and now they have a different defensive staff. Like I talked about, Eberflus being there as the defensive coordinator, Aaron Wycott being a defensive line coach. The defensive coaches are totally new as well too, and a lot of people I know, they're going to miss their defensive back coach that the Cowboys had for a while, and Al Harris, who really helped the Dallas Cowboys defensive backs like a Deron Bland, like a Trayvon Diggs, and even Jordan Lewis when they had him before he went to Jacksonville this offseason, really flourish in their roles. But I think the Cowboys, they're going to be still solid in terms of their defense. I think they're going to have remnants of how they played in 2023, and they can get takeaways and things of that nature too. Matt Eberflus has had some really good defenses. We know that in Chicago as well too, even though that overall as a team they weren't great, and offensively they weren't. At defensive times they were really steady, and at times they had one of the best defenses in the league too. I think that'll prove itself even more, and Matt Eberflus talked about how his emphasis is to get takeaways and stop the run. That's for sure what the Dallas Cowboys need. So with me, like I said, we're going to wait and see for that, because like I said, that's going to be a real make or break thing for the Dallas Cowboys, because at that point, if the Cowboys have problems stopping the run again this year, that's going to be a problem even more, and that's going to put even more pressure on Dak Prescott, for example, like we saw in that Green Bay Packers game, to have to make 1,000 plays, which like I said, the offense will be better, and he'll have some pressure off of him in terms of having more weapons and having hopefully a stronger running game than he has had in the previous couple of years. And I also should add, guys, in 2023, they didn't necessarily have the best running game. Tony Pollard was kind of a shell of himself as well too, mind you, because he had an injury in that 2022-23 playoff game against the 49ers. He wasn't really the same in 2023, and then Dak had that 2023 season where he played great, finishing second in MVP voting. So Dak doesn't necessarily need to have a running game to be successful in the regular season, but in the postseason for sure, because teams are going to be able to key up on you. So we'll see about that. But the Cowboys, it really comes down to me, their key areas for sure: stopping the run, being able to run the football, and just being multiple on offense. And I think we'll see a lot of improvements in all three of those areas. Just some of the positions I may have a little bit questions about right now is the defensive back position for sure, and still DT. Now defensive back, I'd like to talk about Trayvon Diggs. Is going to take a while for him to come back. According to Clarence Hill of DLS Sports though, Trayvon Diggs is trying to target being available for week 1, the opener against the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll see how likely that is. I think it'll probably be more smarter for him to wait a little bit longer, but if that's his goal, that's a better expectation than coming back in the middle of the season. Maybe instead of being back in October, November, December, he could be back week 4 to 5 to 6 range. So that would be really good for the Cowboys. But week 1, I think that would be a little too quick for him coming back. But in that case though, that'll be able to add his presence there, and you wouldn't need to go get a guy like a Jair Alexander or trade for Jalen Ramsey or something like that. You can have Diggs back, and then you'll have him added to that room, being back with Deron Bland and having Kyer Elam, who they traded for, and whenever Shavon Ravel can play, having him as a rookie cornerback there, and then having Israel Mukwamu and Kalen Carson for when he's back from his shoulder injury that he suffered last year. So that would help tremendously tremendously if Trayvon Diggs can be back sooner than mid-season, but I still wouldn't expect him to be back for week 1, but you never know. But really, besides that, guys, and adding in player personnel, because that's really a 365-day type of thing, that's what Will McClay and Stephen Jones have said. The Cowboys' biggest emphasis right now should be getting that Micah Parsons deal done. We all know it's about when, not if it'll get done, but they need to get it done, guys. I just don't understand why the Cowboys operate in that way. We know he's going to get paid, and I give salute to Micah Parsons for still showing up to mandatory mini camp, not getting fined like others players like a Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt, and other players of that nature, even though I understand especially why Trey Hendrickson is holding out. I mean, oh my gosh, the Bengals are so cheap. But Cowboys, get the deal done, guys. Get Micah Parsons there. Micah Parsons has been a leader. He's been one of the best defensive players in the league too, and who knows, this could be his best defensive season yet, and he could even win defensive player of the year, because I think for sure inevitably he's going to get him one soon. Just like by the contract extension, it's about when, not if, and that same thing goes for when Micah Parsons will be the defensive player of the year too. So we'll see about that for sure, but this team will be improved, guys. I know a lot of people don't like them, but if you just take out your biases, personal biases, from a regular season standpoint, this team will be better. I don't know how many wins they're going to get, but I think for sure, if you say over under 9.5 wins, I would for sure take the over. I think they're going to win. In my opinion, I think they're going to go 11-6, but I could see them going 12-5 again, or even 10-7. That schedule, I'm not going to lie, it does get brutal. We all know that first game on Thursday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be an intriguing one, so that's going to be really good. And I'll talk more about the top half of the schedule soon, but I'm really specifically talking about this schedule starting in week 12. They play against the Eagles again at home, then they'll play against the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, then the Lions, then the Vikings, and then the Chargers, then the Commanders on Christmas. That's going to be a really interesting stretch, and we're going to learn a lot from the Dallas Cowboys in that stretch in particular, how they face off against those contenders. That 5-game stretch there, I'm not going to lie, if they went 2-3, I wouldn't even be mad at that as a Cowboys fan, because that'll be tough. And I also believe from that Vikings game to the Commanders game, that's 3 games in 11 days, so that's brutal as well too. So if they can manage to win 2 to 3 games in that stretch, that'll show a lot about this team. Now, I can go back into the early part of the schedule though. I know Cowboys fans for sure will be motivated in this Green Bay Packers game. It'll be on Sunday Night Football at home, similarly at home as it was in the 2023-24 season where they got whooped by the Packers in that playoff game. The Cowboys are going to have a chip on their shoulder for sure in that game, so that'll be intriguing to see. But if you look at their first 10 games, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like 8-2 or 7-3 in that stretch, because they have some solid teams to play against. Like I mentioned, the Packers, and even in that stretch too, they play against the Commanders once as well. Eagles the first game as well too, but it's not going to be too crazy. We'll see how improved the Bears are. They play against them in week 3. The Giants, same thing goes with them when they play against them in week 2. The Jets, we'll see. Aaron Glenn, I think that he'll be able to imprint his culture there, but we'll see how their offense is with Justin Fields. I don't know about that. Panthers, the Cowboys, I'm not going to lie, they usually whoop the Panthers. They even did that last year too. They won by 20 when Cooper Rush was playing, so I'm not too crazy worried about that for the Cowboys. The Commanders, we'll see about that. That Broncos game, I'm not really sure about that, but it'll also be in Denver in that altitude. The Cowboys, they've struggled when they went to Denver in previous seasons, so we'll see about that game. Cardinals, Raiders, I think the Cardinals will be solid this season. We'll see how much, but that's a we'll see game on Monday Night Football. Same with a Monday Night Football game in Las Vegas. You know, Pete Carroll's the head coach of the Raiders, and Brian Schottenheimer being one of Pete Carroll's former coaches there. I think that he'll be up for that game and want to win that one, so that'll be interesting. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if before week 12, before they play against the Eagles, if they're 7-3 and 8-2, and that'll really make a huge difference for them, because like I said, that 5-game stretch between the Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Vikings, and Chargers, that's going to be tough. But I think that they can either go 3-2 or 2-3 in that stretch, or shoot, they could even go 4-1 or 5-0. It just depends on really how dominant this team is, because if they're even better than what I think, that would be crazy if they did something like that, going 4-1 in that stretch or 5-0 in that stretch. But that's hard to do, and we'll see. But I think this Cowboys team will certainly be better. It just comes down to how united they are, and really Dak Prescott staying healthy, because if Dak isn't healthy this year, if he misses a lot of games, you can throw this video out the window, because it won't even matter then. Shout out to Joe Milton. He has a lot of potential and things of that nature too. He'll be an exciting player to watch in terms of that standpoint, but I think he can be very streaky as well too, and he needs some more development too. So the best case scenario for the Dallas Cowboys is for them to have 4 playing behind the center in that play action, getting the ball to George Pickens, to CeeDee Lamb, being multiple, playing at a high level, similarly to what he did in 2023 in the regular season. If he can do that, and also if he's able to do any of that in the playoffs too, that will help this team go a long way. So it won't surprise me if the Cowboys win 10 to 12 to 13 games this year. It just really comes down to how different this offense is, how physical this defense can be, and just overall Dak staying healthy and this team bringing a new culture and being tired of being made fun of, because that's what it comes down to. Everyone sees the stuff that the Cowboys are talked about. Like I said, they're the most polarizing team in professional sports. So we'll see how they attack this season. Training camp is going to be certainly interesting in Oxnard in July. I believe they'll have joint practice with the Los Angeles Rams too, so that'll be interesting too there. But I think this team is going to be better. I think they're for sure going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of how big of a threat that they will be this upcoming season. But this team will be improved, and I think for sure this team will be better in the 2025 NFL season. And if the season goes how I think it will, I think Dak also has a shot of winning comeback player of the year in addition to that too. So with that being said, guys, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Do y'all think that the Dallas Cowboys will be improved this season? Do y'all think I'm tripping? And let me know. Like I said, the Cowboys, they've made a lot of different additions, but when you look at it non-biasedly, objectively, this team is really talented, and we all know the Cowboys should have had some success. I mean, not winning a Super Bowl in 30 years. There's a lot of teams that haven't won a Super Bowl at all, so I will say that, and there's a lot of teams that have been irrelevant, haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. Jets, but no offense, but it's just the truth. But for the Dallas Cowboys, man, this team should be better. Just sometimes they get in their own way, but we'll see if Brian Schottenheimer and his new coach and his new coaching staff and all these players on this 2025 roster are able to break through and not make themselves the typical Cowboys that people see of an inevitable slide or of an inevitable playoff disappointment. So we will see for sure from there. But like I said, I think this team will be better. I think that they will have a great chance to win an NFC East, and I think that they'll be improved because they had 7 wins last year and they had a lot of injuries. I know that, but even getting 7 wins to that team at times looked like a 3-win team, but they still were able to do that. So we'll see what this team does, but I won't be surprised at all if they win a division, if they win a playoff game, or if they finally break through and make the NFC Championship. I mean, that would be wild. I know Cowboys fans will be going crazy then, but maybe they wouldn't be going crazy because the ultimate goal for all teams is to win a Super Bowl. So that's another thing. And I think the most overrated thing ever when people talk about is, oh, we finally made it to the conference championship round, or we made it to the Super Bowl. But the ultimate job and the ultimate point is to win, and it's not just to make it there. You make it there, yippee, hooray. But the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl 2 times in the past 6 or 7 years, and they have no rings to show for it. It's been longer for the 49ers since they won a Super Bowl than the Dallas Cowboys. So with that, you got to get there. So we'll see what the Dallas Cowboys do, but I do think they'll certainly be improved in this 2025 season. Stay tuned for the upcoming videos in this NFL season preview series. Next, we'll be talking about the Washington Commanders. Then next week, in the video after that, talking about the New York Giants, wrapping up the NFC East, and then after the NFC East, we'll be moving on to the AFC East. So stay tuned for this NFL season preview series, guys. I'm really looking forward to making every single video in this series, but also more videos because we're, of course, going to still talk about the NBA, some off-season stuff, because after the NBA Finals, we know there'll be a lot to talk about the NBA draft. But this is a beautiful time from a content making standpoint because we know after the NBA season is over, there's not going to be too much to talk about in terms of that, in terms of a watching standpoint. But as we get further into this NFL offseason and reaching training camp, getting into July, it's going to be a really good time, and we're going to have a lot to talk about. So y'all stay tuned for that, guys, for sure. I'm excited for this upcoming NFL season. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. It's going to be really compelling, and I can't wait to talk about every single team and every single storyline with every single team for sure. So yeah, guys, y'all keep being blessed. Hit the subscribe button and like and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss. TikTok at SwaggyRuss02. Y'all keep being legendary. Keep being blessed, guys. Jesus loves you. You matter. You are here for a purpose. You are loved, guys. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, guys. And keep being a vessel to others and keep loving others and keeping Christ at the center of your lives, guys. Y'all be blessed. Y'all be legendary. I appreciate your support always. Y'all have a good one. See y'all soon.